Chapter 6. Revenge. I always get even. In the 1980s, I recruited a woman from her job in government, where she was making peanuts. She had nothing when she met me. I thought she was smart, and that under my mentoring she could be very good. She was a nobody in her government job and going nowhere. I decided to make her into somebody. I gave her a great job at the Trump Organization, and over time, she became powerful in real estate. She bought a beautiful home. When I was going through tough times in the early 1990s, I needed her help. I asked her to make a phone call to an extremely close friend of hers who held a powerful position at a big bank and who would have done what she asked. She said, "Donald, I can't do that." I had taken her out of a dead-end government job. I encouraged her. I mentored her. I made her. And then she told me she couldn't do it. I got rid of her, and then she started a business on her own. Later, I found out her business failed. I was really happy when I found that out. She had turned on me. After I had done so much to help her, I had asked for one favor in return, and she turned me down flat. She ended up losing her home. Her husband, who was only in it for the money, walked out on her, and I was glad. Over the years, many people have called asking for a recommendation for her. I only give her bad recommendations. I just can't stomach the disloyalty. I put the people who are loyal to me on a high pedestal and take care of them very well. I go out of my way for the people who were loyal to me in bad times. This woman was very disloyal, and now I go out of my way to make her life miserable. She calls, asking to get together for lunch or for dinner. I never return her calls. Over the years, I have made many people successful. Some are thankful for it, and some are not. Some have long memories and remember what you've done for them, even though they are no longer associated with you, but I find that most people forget. One interesting story that took place recently was about a young golf pro who was and is a fine player, but unable to get on the tour. He played the nationwide tour for a number of years, ultimately achieving PGA Tour status. His first few months on the PGA Tour he did very well, although since then he has not done well at all. Prior to his making any substantial money, I would let him practice and play at my highly rated course in Palm Beach, Florida, called Trump International Golf Club. For 3 years he would play the course, hit balls, practice, and thought of it as virtually his home course. When he arrived on the tour and made a name for himself, my head golf pro at Trump International, John Nieport, asked me if it would be all right, based on all we had done for him, to ask him to wear the Trump logo to various PGA tournaments. It wasn't exactly the most important thing in my life, but I said to John, "Sure, ask him. I'm sure he'll have no problem with that after all we did for him." When John spoke to him, he said, "I'm sorry, John, I'll have to speak to my agent." So now I have instructed John, who was very surprised and in fact shocked at this, that after he is no longer on the tour, when he shows up for another round of golf and wants to play the course, just respond by saying, "I'm sorry, but we'll have to call Mr. Trump's agent for permission." Martha Stewart is another example. I was a good and loyal friend of hers. I helped her out after she got out of prison by promoting her TV show, The Apprentice Martha Stewart. I was not a big fan of her show to begin with, because I did not like the underlying idea, 2 versions of the same show. I thought it caused confusion. Still, NBC really wanted to try it. The Apprentice was doing so well, they figured, hey, let's do another one. The fact is, Martha, instead of taking responsibility for the failure of her show, blamed it on me. I did nothing but promote Martha. I said she was a brave woman and she was working hard. I did not see the show until it aired. When I looked at the show, however, I realized it was never going to make it, and she was terrible. Martha told everybody her show was supposed to be The Only Apprentice, and that I had agreed to be fired by her on the air. That's just stupid. What moron would believe she was going to fire the guy with one of the top shows on television? The fact is, her show did not work. For some reason, Martha was not very good at it. She tried. She put in the effort. But she did not have what it took to make a successful show. In life, you have failures, and there's nothing really wrong with that. But when you have a failure, try not to blame other people. Martha's version of The Apprentice was a failure. Mine got great ratings. One worked, one did not. What I am really most upset with Martha about, though, is her ingratitude. I was her single biggest promoter. I promoted her on every show, and I said what a wonderful woman she is, and I still believe that. Never once did she thank me. Never once did she call and say, "Donald, thank you very much." I defended Martha many, many times, and I never got a note. I never got a phone call. One thing about life, when someone helps you, it's always nice to say thanks. I got tired of her attitude. Then, when her show failed, she blamed me on top of everything else. But rather than play dead, I went on the attack. I wrote a scathing letter telling her that she had only herself to blame for her tanked show. I wrote, "Your performance was terrible. The show lacked mood, temperament, and just about everything a show needs for success." I added, "I knew it would fail as soon as I first saw it, and your low ratings bore me out. My motto is always get even. When someone screws you, screw them back in spades." Sir Richard Branson and Mark Cuban also failed with their poor copies of The Apprentice. Richard Branson, who owns Virgin Atlantic Airways, is a good guy. He called me recently. But I have to tell you this story. Last year, I was upset with him because he was doing a new show, a copy of The Apprentice, named The Rebel Billionaire, Branson's Quest for the Best. Nobody ever remembers the name of his show. 2 months before the show was going to air, he started promoting it with hot air balloons and media hype. They call him a billionaire, but how can anyone become a billionaire owning an airline? The fact is, he has other good businesses, but airplanes are expensive. There's too much competition, and ticket prices are too low to make a profit. I don't know how anyone could become a billionaire running an airline. Maybe that's why he wanted to do a reality show. Anyway, before the show went on the air, they interviewed him on Fox, asking him what he thought of Donald Trump. "He's my friend." So he said, "Oh, he's great. Donald's a friend of mine. He's a great businessman and very successful. I respect him a lot." Then about 2 weeks before the show, some moron producer told Branson, "You can't say nice things about Trump. You have to say horrible things about Trump." Richard said, "Why?" The producer said, "Because you have to say outrageous things about him to get good ratings." Then, a week before the show went on the air, he said, "I like Donald Trump, and he doesn't like shaking people's hands." He had lots of bad things to say about me. It was bad enough that he was trying to knock off my show. Now he was insulting me on top of it. I vowed to get revenge. I didn't say anything about it then. I waited until his show went on the air. I did not want to attack him if the show became a big success. I didn't want to look foolish. Frankly, I did not want to help his ratings by giving him publicity. Finally, it went on the air, and it tanked, only getting 4.85 million viewers, and the critics hated it. The Washington Post TV critic Tom Shales called it silly, stupid, and ridiculous. The network quickly canceled the show. It was so bad. Now it was my moment. I went after that guy like crazy. I told the New York Daily News, I thought the show was terrible. The Apprentice is the hottest show there is. Richard Branson, your ratings speak very loudly, and you just got fired. When Cuban's show failed, I wrote a letter to the New York Post stating that I could have saved him a lot of time and energy, in that I understand life, business, and television. Mark Cuban has absolutely zero television persona or personality. He's got the look of a Neanderthal, and he just doesn't get it. Most importantly, he is not a winner. When his team should have won the NBA playoffs the season before last, they totally choked in the stretch and lost to the Miami Heat and the great Shaquille O'Neal, a friend of mine, and Dwayne Wade. This year was even worse. They went into the playoffs, predicted to win the NBA championship, and instead lost in the first round to a totally unheralded Golden State Warriors team. When Mark did his show on ABC, called The Benefactor, it was an immediate and resounding failure. It drew flies and was thrown off the air very quickly. But in order to get a little buzz and excitement, he said things about me which weren't true. He stated that he was at my Mar-a-Lago house many years ago, and I called him over and belittled people that were not on my economic level. That's not my deal. In fact, my deal is the exact opposite. I have much more fun belittling people like Mark Cuban. Besides, I don't like people that make up stories. I have always said that Mark Cuban is a loser. Time will prove me right. Branson, on the other hand, is a good guy. When somebody hits you, hit 'em back harder. With Rosie O'Donnell, it's a lot worse. Rosie O'Donnell is a pig. She is a degenerate. She attacked Kelly Ripa, who's a wonderful person, because Clay Aiken put his hand in her mouth to shut her up. Rosie attacked Kelly for that incident. Kelly's nice, and she didn't really attack Rosie back. Rosie attacked Danny DeVito. She talked about him as if he was an alcoholic because he went out drinking with George Clooney the night before a show. He's not an alcoholic. I know him. He is a friend of mine. I called him, and I said, "Danny, she called you an alcoholic. Why don't you do something about it?" This is before I had a problem with her. I told him, "Go on television and announce that she's bad news, and you're not an alcoholic." He said, I don't want to get involved." I said, "All right, you've got a different personality than I do." One day, I got a call from a newspaper reporter telling me that Rosie went on this ranting, raving lunatic tirade about you for about 10 minutes on The View. Basically, she attacked me because I gave Tara Conner, the then current Miss USA, a second chance when everybody thought I was going to fire her. She insulted me in many names and said some very ugly things about me. Tara Conner is a very lovely girl, but she had some problems adjusting to the pressures of New York. She started doing drugs and drinking too much. It was causing lots of difficulties. But after talking with Tara, I decided to give her a second chance. She's been to rehab, and now she's doing fine. She thanked me for saving her life. Rosie O'Donnell, however, did not like that I gave Tara a second chance. She went on television, and the venom came pouring out. A friend of mine called and said, "Boy, does she hate you." I've known Rosie for a long time. She has always been bad news. She was fired from her television show, The Rosie O'Donnell Show, because of bad ratings. She made a total disaster of her magazine. Her meddling and viciousness destroyed the morale of everyone that worked for her magazine. The publisher of the company, who was a rising star, ended up losing his job. Her Broadway play was a total mess. She's an unattractive person, both inside and out. Rosie is about as low as you can go. She's a bully who has been that way for a long time. Now I had a choice. I could attack back, or I could let it pass. And I chose to attack her so hard she would rue the day she decided to attack me. The media was very interested in my response. I gave them an earful. I got calls from Entertainment Tonight, Inside Edition, and others asking, "Do you have a response?" Yes, I had a response. I said, Rosie O'Donnell is disgusting both inside and out. Take a look at her. She's a slob. She talks like a truck driver. Her show failed. Her magazine was a total catastrophe. She got sued. So probably I'll sue her, because it would be fun. I'd like to take some money out of her pockets. I said, Rosie is a very unattractive woman who is a bully. Rosie is a loser, and ultimately The View will fail because of Rosie. Barbara Walters made a mistake in hiring her. And she told me, Donald, don't get into the mud with pigs. One morning, I went on the Today Show to talk about The Apprentice. But instead, Meredith Vieira started asking me questions about Rosie. Right off, she asked me, Donald, why did you attack Rosie? What nerve! It was Rosie who attacked me. I was just fighting back. Then she asked, is it true that you said she was crude? I said, no, I never said that. It's not strong enough. I said, she's a total degenerate. Then she asked, is it true that you called her a fat pig? I said, no, I called her a pig. It is funny. I called her a total degenerate and nobody cared. But when they thought I called her fat, they were all going ballistic. Rosie said her children came up to her and said, Mommy, Mommy, he called you the F word. But I don't believe her children ever said that. I replied to Meredith, I didn't say she was fat, because that's politically incorrect. But come to think of it, Meredith, is she fat? Meredith evaded the question with, well, I'd rather not answer that. I pressed the point. Meredith, I want to know, is she fat? She sidesteps again with, I don't think I should answer that. Then I said, assuming I did call her a fat pig, do you think I'd be wrong? I didn't, but do you think I'd be wrong? Then she said, let's get off this subject. That just shows you that these TV reporters really have no guts. I mean, I love Meredith. She's very nice, but she did the wrong thing. Then she came back with another stupid question. Donald, why do you always talk about Rosie? I said, because you asked me questions. I didn't bring Rosie up. It was the dumbest interview I think I've ever had in my life. About that time, Rosie announced that she suffers from depression. Reporters called me for a comment. Rather than saying, I have no comment, or as most people would say, oh, isn't that too bad? Oh, that's so bad. I said, I think I can cure her depression. If she'd stop looking in the mirror, I think she'd stop being so depressed. That went on Entertainment Tonight, and the reporter said, oh, it was a horrible statement. It was horrible. What's so horrible about it? She attacks me and tells ugly lies about me, but I'm not allowed to attack back? Here's the point. A few days later, Rosie is interviewed on the red carpet. The reporter asked, Rosie, Donald said you shouldn't look in a mirror. It will solve your problems with depression. Do you have a comment? She replied, I have no comment. I don't want to talk about him. You know why? Because I hit that horrible woman right smack in the middle of the eyes. It's true. She'll talk about Kelly Ripa, she'll talk about Danny DeVito or Tom Selleck, but you know, when you hit a bully back, they always fold. I learned it in high school. You've got to hit a bully really hard, really strongly, right between the eyes. Some people would have ignored her insults, but I decided to fight back and make her regret the day she decided to unload on me. That's why I tell people, get even. This is not your typical advice. Get even, but this is real-life advice. If you don't get even, you are just a schmuck. I really mean it, too. For some reason, athletes like me, and they call me a lot. I know many athletes that have lost a tremendous amount of money. They're young kids who make a lot of money at a very young age, and they lose most of it before they retire. They have nothing left. It's all gone because they have managers, accountants, lawyers, agents, and so-called financial advisors that take it away. To them, it's like taking candy from a baby. An athlete friend of mine called me one day and told me he had evidence that his manager had stolen all his money. He's a great athlete who played for years in the NBA. He said, "Mr. Trump, with the information I found, I have this guy cold, right?" This athlete is very famous, and you all know his name, even if you're not a big fan. I said, "Let's go get that mother-you-know-what. Let's go get him. I can help you get him. I've got the nastiest lawyer that you could imagine. We're going to sue your manager's ass off. We're going to hurt him so badly, he's going to come back to you on his knees." I added, "I'm going to go get this guy for you, and he's going to suffer, and you're going to get a lot of your money back, whatever this guy hasn't squandered." Then he said, "Oh, Mr. Trump, don't do it. I don't want to do that." I said, "What do you mean you don't want to do it? Why?" He said, "Well, I don't want to get involved." I said, "Why?" Here is a great athlete who lost all his money, and yet he does not want to get involved in going after his manager who robbed him blind. He did not steal nice and easy or make a little mistake. He robbed him. I said, "Listen, you have to do this, or you're the dumbest person I've met in a long time." He said, "I can't do it." I said, "That's okay, but never, ever call me again, because you're a schmuck." And I have not spoken to the guy since. He calls me once in a while, but I don't ever talk to him, because he's a loser. You have to show people you can't be pushed around. His next manager, whoever it may be, and he does not have long to go in his career, will probably steal the money he's making now. Why shouldn't he? This guy's not going to come after him, because he's a jerk. So do not hesitate to go after people. This is important, not only for the person you're going after, but for other people to know not to mess around with you. When other people see that you don't take crap and see you are really going after somebody for wronging you, they will respect you. Always have a good reason to go after someone. Do not do it without a good reason. When you are wronged, go after those people because it's a good feeling and because other people will see you doing it. Getting even is not always a personal thing. It's just a part of doing business. An example is my dealings with Merv Griffin. Merv Griffin recently passed away. He was an interesting character. He and I fought quite a bit, but in the end, I think we gained a mutual respect. He would tell people that Donald Trump was a genius. I think he even wrote it in his book. But one thing never changed. Merv would state to everybody that he beat me in a deal, when in actuality he knew better, and admitted such to me. I sold him a company called Resorts International for a very high price. I had most of the voting stock, so there was nothing he could have done unless I was willing to sell. But his price was so high that it would have been insane not to take his offer. Immediately after the deal was made, Merv went around telling everybody that he beat me. "I beat Donald Trump at the deal," he would shout. Newspapers and magazines were calling me and exclaiming that Merv beat Donald in a deal. I'll never forget telling one of the reporters, "Deals are funny. Tell me about it in 5 years." But in the meantime, I got a very high price, much more than he would have had to pay, because I would have taken far less. In any event, the deal turned out to be a disaster for Merv, and to the best of my knowledge, he filed for Chapter 11 on this transaction at least 2 times. I believe that's why he called me a genius, but I can also say he was an amazing competitor. Very nice and smooth on the outside, but a real tiger from within. He did say at a certain event, "I used to have a lot of coconuts," jokingly referring to how much the Resorts International deal with me cost him. Because of business, Merv and I were not friends, but I will miss him. I love getting even when I get screwed by someone. Yes, it's true. People still try to take me for a ride, and sometimes they succeed. Rarely. But when they do, I go after them. You know what? People do not want to play around with me as much as they do with others. They know if they do, they are really in for a big fight. Always get even. When you're in business, you need to get even with people who screw you. You need to screw them back 15 times harder. You do it not only to get the person who messed with you, but also to show the others who are watching what will happen to them if they mess with you. If someone attacks you, do not hesitate. Go for the jugular. Attack them back in spades. Zanker's take. Life is full of losers who love to mess with people, especially people who are successful. I think it comes down to one of two things: jealousy or greed, or a combination of the two. Sometimes there's no money involved. As Donald says, they just do it for sport. One time, a company came out with a complete knockoff of the Learning Annex and started promoting it in direct competition with me in New York City. They were basically stealing our customers. I sent a letter asking the owner to stop ripping us off. They refused, so I immediately sued for copyright violations and trademark infringement. When we went to court, the judge asked them if they wanted to settle out of court. They said no. So the judge ruled in the Learning Annex's favor and set the other company's fine so high that it could not pay it and had to go under. Oh, I felt very good about this. You have to go after people who mess with you. Persistence is crucial. My whole company was at stake. I could not lie down and just take it. I had to fight back. I saw the fight all the way to the New York State Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York. I kept fighting until I won. Never stop until you get even. Another time in the 1980s, when my business was really getting off the ground, I hired a speaker who was a best-selling author and expert on relationships. She was scheduled to speak at the Learning Annex in Washington, D.C. on a Saturday morning. Her flight was due to arrive from Los Angeles on Friday night. We had hundreds of people signed up for her class. At 11 p.m., she called to tell me that her flight had been canceled and that she would not be able to teach the class. I was in a real bind because these people needed help and were looking forward to the class. It was too late to contact all those people and tell them that the event was canceled. They would come to the class the next day and find out that it was not going to happen. That was not a good thing for my business or my reputation. I checked with the airlines and found out that the flight was not canceled at all. It was clear to me that she had just decided at the last minute not to honor her commitment. She would rather disrespect me and all the people who had signed up for the class. If she would have owned up to what she did and apologized for causing me problems, I would have let it go. But she treated me and the students who were attending the class like we didn't matter. After that happened, I started making a list of people that hurt me. I put her name on the list. Then I sat back and waited for a chance to get revenge. Sometimes my list is short, other times it grows. But I always have my list, and trust me, you never want to be on my list. Sometime later, a TV producer called me. This same author was being considered for a TV show about relationships. She gave my name as a reference. I gave this woman the worst possible recommendation you could imagine. I told them she was a terrible person, an extremely dishonest and irresponsible person. Later, I was happy to hear that she never got that show off the ground. I'm not sure if my bad reference had something to do with it, but I certainly hope so. She has called many times to try to get booked for classes at the Learning Annex to promote her books, but I never let her speak. I never forgot how rude and disrespectful she acted toward me and my students. I never let things like that pass. I always get even. Recently, I had to fire an employee for incompetence. I hate firing people, but this guy did a terrible job, and I had to let him go. A few weeks later, I got a letter from an attorney stating that he was suing me for wrongful termination. There was completely no justification for this suit, but it would cost me a bundle to defend. So I decided to get even instead. I got an idea. I called my tech guy into my office and asked him to look through all the deleted files on the computer that this person had used while he worked for me, and to see what he had been up to while he was supposedly working for me. My computer expert came back with some interesting stuff. Apparently, this guy had been surfing hundreds of porn sites from his work computer. I had my lawyer send a letter to his lawyer explaining that if we were to go to court, all this information about him would be made public. That I did not care one bit about all the scorn and embarrassment he would suffer. I never heard from him again. It just shows that you have to play hardball when someone tries to bully you. Always make a list of people who hurt you. Then sit back and wait for the appropriate time to get revenge. When they least expect it, go after them with a vengeance. Go for their jugular. Now, if you get a sincere apology from someone and the check you had expected, accept it and let it go. But if not, just wait for the opportunity, and when it comes, hit 'em hard. To sum it up, as a child, your parents and teachers told you not to fight and to try to get along with people. They meant well, trying to protect you from the harsh realities of the world. But in the world of grown-ups, things are different. Many bullies out there try to push you around. They can get very nasty. When a bully comes after you, do not fold up and play nice. Do not lie down and take it. Get even. This is not your typical advice, but it is real-life advice. If you do not get even, you're just a schmuck. Most business writers won't be so blunt and honest with you about getting even. They know it's the truth, but won't tell you because they want people to think of them as a nice person. But I don't like to mince words. When you're wronged and you do nothing about it, you aren't nice. You're a schmuck. That's why I say when you are wronged, go after those people, because it's a good feeling, and because other people will see you doing it. I love it, because I get screwed all the time, so I go after people. You know what? People don't want to mess with me as much as others. They know if they do, they are really in for a big fight. Always get even. Points to remember. When somebody screws you, screw them back in spades. Forgive good people, but never forgive someone who is bad. When someone attacks you publicly, always strike back. If you want to stop a bully, hit them right between the eyes. They'll think twice about doing it again. Even some of the toughest top athletes are schmucks who let people steal from them and are afraid to get even. Always have a good reason to get even. Go for the jugular so that people watching will not want to mess with you. If someone knows they made a mistake and they apologize, forgive them and move on. But never trust them again.
Walls are barriers. They divide, separate, segregate. We've seen walls before.